We're ready for green, clean energy systems. We're ready for the jobs that are generated and already being generated by our healthy oceans. Right now, we've got about 200 people signed up for the Hill tomorrow. Lauren Townsend, where are you? Anyway, she stands up. She'll give us some briefings. Basically, right now, we have 23 states that will be on the Hill tomorrow, and also in front of the Department of Interior on Thursday to let Ryan Zinke know that he works for us, not fossil fuel. 23 states, and not just New Jersey and California and Rhode Island and Hawaii, but we also have states here. We've got Colorado and Arizona and Ohio. And the Inland Ocean Coalition, understanding every state's a coastal state, understanding that we're facing these huge challenges. They not only want to open up our offshore waters to drilling, they want to take away the protections we've already established, the hope spots, in Hawaii and the Atlantic. And of course, the person who first talked about creating hope spots for half the ocean is our friend and generally known as her deepness, Dr. Sylvia Earle, who's with us because she's always where the ocean first, breaking wave is. And anyway, I'd like to invite Sylvia up to speak to us.
Thank you, David. A big shout out, please, for David and for Wendy Benchley. Woohoo! Thank you. Thank you for bringing us together. And you talk about making waves. You're relentless and wondrous for doing what you have been doing. Oh, and Senator, are you still here? I'm a Jersey girl. Woohoo, you make me proud to be a Jersey girl. It was on a New Jersey beach a few years ago where I was knocked over by a wave and the ocean got my attention and has held my attention ever since. But it's life in the ocean that has really kept me going for, lo, these many years, more to come. What is it that sets this planet apart from all the others? It's the water, it's the ocean, it's the existence of a living planet. It's taken 4.5 billion years to get us to where we are. It's taking us a few decades to unravel the elements that are absolutely vital to keep us alive and well. Okay, so I had a little talk with David before this morning's event, and have to say, David, you're kind of depressed about the state of the world. I mean, when you look at the numbers, read the headlines, or the fine print on page 15 or whatever it is about what's happening to the living world, there's plenty of reason for despair, especially since the election this year. But, come on. If I could be born anywhere in time, sings Jackson Browne, it would be now. It would be now. Why would he say such a thing? Why, when I speak, as I did just a few days ago, to a second grade class in Marin and a fifth grade class in Marin, that I tell the kids that they're the luckiest people, luckiest kids ever to be born. Now is the time. Because, as never before, we're armed with knowledge. We're knowing what nobody who ever lived before the present time could know. Eat your heart out, Galileo. He was such a smart human being, and he was pressured by people who were not so intelligent around him. He presumed to declare, based on evidence that the Earth is not the center of the universe. Oh my gosh, what a concept. It wasn't that long ago, geologically speaking, or even in the history of humankind, that we really, generally speaking, thought Earth was the center of everything. All those sparkly things up in the sky, all that revolved around us. Not too different from the attitude of some of the people who are here in Washington, D.C. today, calling the shots or trying to. But now we know that we are a part of something much larger than any of us individually or collectively. We are a part of nature. And we have to respect nature, the natural systems that got us to where we are. Amazing when you think about it. All of those sparkly things in the sky, none of them inhabitable by the likes of us, as far as we can tell. And even if there is some little speck out there somewhere, it's not going to be an alternative to what we have to look at right here, make peace with nature, make peace with the ocean. President Obama once remarked that our highest priority must be to keep the world safe for our children. Oh, he was thinking guns and things at the time. But those words, let's keep the world safe for our children, how do we do that? It isn't just what we do to one another. It isn't just the social crunch that we impose on one another that causes threats to our future. It's what we're doing to our life support system. And that's anchored in the ocean. No water, no life, no ocean, no us. Somehow, when kids start to learn their ABCs and their numbers, why isn't it just as important, maybe even more important, to know who they are, where they've come from, where we might be going, about the nature of the world? Well, here's the thing. I can forgive those 500, 400, 300, even 100 years ago for not conveying to the next generation that we've really got to take care of the natural world because it takes care of us, it makes our lives possible. I can forgive it because we did not really understand what now is known, that we are changing the nature of nature through the consumption of nature. Well, look, every living thing does what humans do, consume the world around them. We eat our neighbors, the fish, the birds. You know, we cut the trees to build our houses, to foster our prosperity. That's how every creature, whether you're an earthworm or an eagle, you use the natural world. But until about a couple of 100 years ago, well, actually, whenever humans really mastered technology to consume faster and more comprehensively the natural world like no other creature on the planet, things were moving along with changes always. Nature of existence has changed, but at a kind of a stately pace, with a few big interruptions, like having a comet, an asteroid, strike the Earth. I mean, big deal. But now what we are doing has comparable consequences to the planet, changing the nature of nature. So with all the other things that are going on, we must keep, like, front and center the recognition. Our highest priority has to be to keep the world safe for our children. Well, for us as well. Now that we know we're able to do that, 500 years ago, even 50 years ago, we thought the ocean was too big to fail. No matter what we put into it, no matter what we take out of it, the ocean would continue to be what the ocean always has been, in our view, limitless. All right, so here we are, the Blue Vision Summit, Blue Frontier. The seaweed revolution. Whatever you want to call it. It's a moment in time. And we are armed with knowledge. We've got the evidence of melting ice in polar areas. Who could imagine that 50 years ago? Well, few smart scientists could see the potential for this happening, but we are living it. We don't have to imagine it. Who could imagine that we could strip the ocean of 90% of many of the big fish, like sharks and tunas and swordfish, cod, even the little fish, at risk because we're so good at finding, catching, and marketing them? With what consequences? Half the coral reefs. You heard about the state. If you don't have to hear it here, you can read it anywhere about what's happening to the Great Barrier Reef, protected first in the 1970s. At about the same time that this nation stepped up and declared the National Marine Sanctuary Act. Isn't it amazing? In the 70s. Not so amazing when you think about what provoked in the 1970s the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, the Marine Mammal Protection Act, the Coastal Zone Management Act, the National Marine Sanctuaries Act. Many look at that view of Earth from space as a trigger, as a moment in time that shocked people with the awareness that this is it, this blue sphere in the midst of a universe of inhospitable alternatives. It really isn't an alternative. This is it. Well, now there's a second reason to be shocked into awareness, and that is to see how powerful we are at consuming the natural world. Half the mangroves around the world. We know now how important they are for capturing carbon, for providing a bulwark against storms along the coastal areas, so that every mangrove tree has a magnified importance economically and otherwise for security reasons. But now we know the shock of awareness of our power to alter the nature of the world. But being so powerful, we also can take action that can turn things around. And we've got the evidence of that too. That where we proactively embrace nature on the land and in the sea, wonderful things can happen. It's called restoration, recovery. We have examples all over the world, mostly since the 1970s, although there's one shining little example down in the Caribbean where President Kennedy in 1961 used the power of his presidency under a little piece of U.S. legislation called the Antiquities Act, designated Buck Island as a national monument. It's tiny, but it's really important because it was later expanded a bit by another president, Clinton, but it's a little patch in the midst of a part of the ocean where on the order of 80% of the corals have disappeared in the last 50 years. And yet where the fish are protected, where the lobsters are protected, where it's like a little jewel that is serving as a source of restoration in the air. You can actually find grouper living in the little Buck Island Reserve. It's hard to find grouper almost anywhere in the Caribbean these days. We're so good at finding, catching, and consuming them. Look, what gives us cause for hope? It's knowing. It's knowing. And what gives cause for despair? It's ignorance. The biggest problem with the ocean, yes, what we're putting in, yes, what we're taking out, but the biggest problem has to be ignorance. it's not so obvious in this room, but step a few feet away. How do we get into the minds and hearts of people everywhere the same level of awareness, of hunger for knowing more and caring more that is evidenced here? I think that's the biggest challenge that we have. How do we take the evidence, the knowing, and make it sort of common to everyone? There are certain things that become a part of civilization that cause us to elevate from one generation to the next. We do not have to start from scratch every year to figure out numbers, to devise an alphabet, to develop a computer or a car or an airplane or whatever. We are armed with technology, we're armed with knowledge, we have plenty of reason for hope if we use what we've got. That's what I think this conference is really all about. It's bringing together people who know more about the critical issues that face humankind in terms of taking care of the underpinnings of what makes our, not just our prosperity, but our very existence possible. And how do we spread the word? How do we communicate to others who are not as well informed as those in this room, those who will eventually trickle into this conference over the next few days? How can we, each one of us, become an ambassador? Driven. How can we take more seriously? How do we create that sense of urgency? It's real. It's genuine. But how do we motivate others to be as motivated as this group? That's the key. Jackson Brown sings. My daughter works to help develop technologies to access the ocean. The kids that I encountered last year, who went to become part of a film called Sea of Hope, the National Geographic produced. Bob Nixon actually inspired to do this this journey around the coastline of the United States, taking kids out of Washington, D.C. Some had never seen the ocean, never been on an airplane, let alone go in a submarine. Oh, but they did. They have become motivated. I wish I had the answer. And I'm here to maybe find some answers about how to overcome this lethargy of, we can still breathe, right? It's okay. Never mind that plankton in the ocean for the last 100 years has been declining and now at an accelerating rate. Phytoplankton, the little engine that generates oxygen, takes up carbon, feeds the ocean systems, and basically helps maintain the planet in a way that is favorable to us. Knowing is the answer, but it isn't good enough just for a handful of us to know. It wasn't good enough for just Galileo to know that Earth is not the center of the universe. It had to become common knowledge so that with every decision we make, it's in that context, that framework of knowing that the choice you make about what to eat, what to wear, how you power your lives, what you teach your kids, that everything is within this framework of understanding that we must respect the natural world. We have to take care of the ocean. We have to look at the laws, even the laws that make it okay, legal, to extract large quantities of wildlife. Question them. Question them. It's not just the illegal extraction of wildlife, it's also the legal extraction, the rules and regulations that make it okay to take too much out of the ocean. And do what kids do best. Ask questions. Look for evidence. Become a scientist. Do what a scientist does. It doesn't matter what else you do. Observe carefully. Report honestly what you see. That's what scientists do. And everyone can do it. Everyone should do it. Look for the evidence. And be ready to act whenever an opportunity arises. So, tomorrow, it's an opportunity. Use your voice. Be not just brave. It's not a matter of brave. I mean, consider the alternatives to not doing something now. If we don't take action within the next 10 days, 10 months, 10 years, whatever the time frame, it just gets harder. Our decisions will shape everything that follows. It's just evidence. Look at how we have come to be where we are. As my fellow explorer in residence at the National Geographic, Zahi Hawass, the director of the pyramids, says, if you do not know your past, you cannot know your future. Well, look at the past. How did we arrive where we are? Okay, it's our turn now. How do we take it from where we are to get to a better place? Well, informing the kids is a good place to start, but it starts even before that, to inform ourselves. Look for those opportunities, those moments when we can insert knowledge, insert our power to turn things in a very positive way. Elections, okay, there's a good example. But there's a conference coming up in June where the United Nations is coming to New York, and for the first time really focusing on the ocean for about a week. A week, oh well, it's a start. And then the summer, in July, again, the United Nations is having a conference to consider the high seas, half the world. 64% of the ocean, but half of the world. What do we have to do? What are our targets? For the blue vision, thinking about 2020 and 2020 vision, the United Nations is suggesting 10% of the ocean should be protected by 2020. Where are we now? Less than 5% of the ocean protected in ways that even the fish are safe, or the lobsters, or the shrimp, or whatever. So, use your power. You heard it from the senator. You heard it from David. You'll hear it from me. I think all of you need to say that to yourself, look in the mirror, but say it to others as well. Use your power. We have a chance, as never before, to go from where we are to a much better, bluer place than we are now. By protecting the ocean, it really means protecting everything we care about. Now's the time. Maybe as never again. Thank you.
And that's why she's her deepness. And it's good to remember. She points out, you know, in Galileo's days, it was the solar system deniers who had the political power. And today, you know, a coastal real estate developer and TV celebrity denies the reality of climate and the impact of the oceans. But we're the people here who get so much from it in terms of, you know, recreation, transportation, protein, energy, just that sense of awe and wonder. We're giving it back, and we're here to strategize for the next few days, how we deal with the threat of offshore oil, how we deal with the threat of plastic and other forms of pollution in the ocean so that plastic doesn't end up weighing more than all the amazing living marine life that's still out there. And the great thing, and to talk about coastal resiliency and millions of people at risk from rising seas and bad policies. And we have all the solutions. You know, if you stop killing fish, they tend to grow back. You know, the challenge is one of political will. So that's what we're doing the next few days. We can protect our ocean and our blue economy and our communities.